Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Yesterday was another mediocre day on Capitol Hill. Confirmation hearings have already begun, and judging by the confirmation hearings for the would-be Secretary of State, they will be as unenlightening and unilluminating as we have expected these things to be. Clearly, there is a love fest going on between Blinken and the senators, and it's almost certain that he will sail through the Senate with something like almost unanimous support. An interesting contrast between almost all of Trump's nominees who had difficulties getting confirmed. They had huge numbers of Democrats voting against them. But what was interesting was Blinken's apparent reluctance to go too far back on Trump's policies. So despite all of the attacks on Trump during the campaign, it looks like Blinken, or in other words, the Biden administration, will keep in place many of Trump's stances. Obviously, no move from Jerusalem back to Tel Aviv for the US Embassy. The Abraham Accords, which Donald Trump touted during the latter days of his administration, were highly commendable, and Blinken was very enthusiastic about them. No apparent movement on Iran at the moment. But what was interesting is Blinken's very positive words describing Trump's policy toward China. And he appears to be promising that the Biden administration will indeed continue with its aggressive stance on China. On the Taiwan issue, he punted on, didn't say he was going to walk it back. He just punted. So this was rather interesting. What was your take, Peter?
Well, exactly the same, but I think it is, you kind of take a few steps back. It just shows how bipartisan a foreign policy is, and how bipartisan Trump's foreign policy was. I mean, if the Jerusalem thing, okay, that's very symbolic. It wasn't the U.S. to give away the Golan Heights, okay? It wasn't. I always thought about these things as Trump doing what he thought would be a political favor at zero cost. Okay, I mean, do you think Trump cares where the American capital is in Israel? I don't think he cares at all. Makes Bibi happy? All right, fine. Okay, Golan Heights, sure, take it. It's not ours to give. And this Abraham Accords. Well, we've talked exhaustively about it. There's no real meat to it. It's just an anti-Iran alliance, nothing
Right.
more. Okay. And it's a great way to sell American arms. As a matter of fact, more than anything else, is that there's no peace in those accords, okay? It was a way to keep the U.S. in the Middle East, okay? It was a backdoor through arms sales. So, people can tout it. It's basically a fiction for me, and it gives these kingdoms and sheikhs and all that cover, okay? So it doesn't move the needle whatsoever in the Middle East, okay? It's just it's political theatrics, okay? But China. Now this is an interesting one here because Trump made he fired a shot across the bow that the U.S. and China have to come to some kind of agreement, okay? And it's not going to be very easy. It's going to be very difficult. China is the United States' most powerful adversary. And I say that in a great power sense, okay? I can't overstress, how the public has just been misled about the nature of diplomacy and international politics. It's always been about great power competition. The United States is a great power. China is a great power. There's these claims that China wants to take over the world are ridiculous. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. But the China will challenge American hegemony. Oh, you bet it will. Okay. And that's where we're going to get the tension. Though it's not, I wouldn't claim that China is a military threat to the United States whatsoever. And Pompeo's antics at the end of the last days of the Trump administration vis-a-vis Taiwan was just outright dangerous and against promises the U.S. has made to China going back 40 years now. Okay, so but it does seem that that's going to stay in place. We'll see where it goes. Of course, he said he didn't like the how Trump did it, meaning the tone and the tenor and the rhetoric and things like that. But it seems to be a policy the Biden administration is going to at least consider and not outright reject. But I mean, for me, the biggest thing is that just how bipartisan it is, and watching, this love fest with all these senators and Tony, because Tony knows all of them. They all know him. Okay. I mean, this is just a swamp culture. Okay. So I didn't expect anything earth shattering. I mean, it's going to happen on domestic policy. The interesting thing is that Blinken is a cheerleader for foreign wars. Okay, I would have liked the senators to probe a little bit more. Like, what are you going to do about Syria? I mean, really, you're
yes,
on the record of saying, Blinken, you're on the record of saying.
That's the whole point. That as far as most of the senators are concerned, they're on board with all of that. So that's why when Blinken comes along and sounds belligerent, and he did sound pretty belligerent on most things. He's got all of the senators, all the Lindsey Grahams of the world eating out of his hands. The only time he runs into trouble is when he seems to be suggesting that maybe down the road, the Biden administration will return to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action with Iran. The moment he says that, he's got senators opposing him. But if he says, look, we've got to really deal with Iran. Iran is a mischief maker in the Middle East. Its ballistic missile program is terrible. It supports terrorism. It is the #1 sponsor of terrorism in the world. And he was asked specifically by Lindsey Graham, do you consider Iran the #1 sponsor of terrorism in the world? And he said, yes, I do. He's good to go. And he was asked, going back to China, do you agree with the Secretary of State Pompeo's observation that the treatment of the Uyghurs in China constitutes genocide? He said, yeah, I do. Well, that's how you waltz through confirmation hearings. So yeah, that's who Blinken is. He knows his audience. He's never going to get opposition, at least in the Senate. I mean, the House is a little different, but at least in the Senate, he's not going to get any opposition if he's super belligerent on everything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, okay? And that's what, when his temperous outbursts once in a while, to me, it's just fake. Okay, this is just, you're putting on a show right here. Now he wants to go back circa 2016, and so did most of the senators. Okay, so I mean that's why we're not going to get much rancor out of it here, because they all want to go back. I mean, with the exception of like Congressman Gates, maybe Jim Jordan, and both in the House. I mean, how many senators, with the exception of Rand Paul, question American foreign policy fundamentals? Who?
Not in the Senate.
Not in the Senate.
In the Senate, no. Other than Rand Paul, no, there isn't. As I say, I mean, it's a little different in the House, but among the senators, I can only think of Rand Paul, who shows any criticism of U.S. foreign policy.
You see, the thing is that this hearing, his confirmation hearing, is a love fest. It's a formality. He is going to be confirmed here, and I don't really care. Okay, what I care about is what policies they're going to start pursuing. Okay, and then I'll take an interest. And I'll be looking at the specific areas of Syria. I'll be looking at Ukraine, their attitude towards Russia, and how they're going to square the circle when it comes to China.
Well, he's already indicated that they're going to continue with the transfer of lethal weaponry to Ukraine, training, arming the Ukraine military. So he sounds all extremely belligerent. Plus he made all the ritual things about Navalny, who, incidentally, we should just note in passing, is being given much more generous treatment than Julian Assange. So, how Russia treats its dissidents with how we treat our dissidents. So, but that's a separate issue. But he nonetheless made his swipe about Navalny and Putin, while also saying, well, we want to renegotiate, or we want to extend the New START treaty. Again, we kick Russia all the time, and so, but we still want our strategic arms treaty. So
it'll be very interesting if there's going to be the continued demand on that topic to bring China into the fold. I wonder if that is going to change here.
Well, it doesn't sound like that's the one that they're pursuing. So I think that part of the Trump policy isn't going to be.
Essentially, this is a confirmation hearing confirming bad habits. Okay, that's essentially what it is here. But at the same time, Trump really didn't shake up the works. I'm sorry, he didn't. And again, you have all these visuals and theatrics, our best allies in the world, all this kind of stuff. But it didn't move the needle very much, and I'm very disappointed with that. I'm very disappointed, particularly when it's within the president's prerogatives to shake up the works if he wants to. I know Trump tried, but he didn't try hard enough. Because he had a program called The Apprentice, apparently, which I never saw. But the most famous line was, "You're fired," from what I understand. Right. Well, he should have said that a whole lot more and not hired a lot of these other clowns.
The whole point is that what Trump kind of got the worst of all worlds. He didn't do anything to improve relations with Russia, as he promised. And he still got continually attacked right up to the very last day of his administration. He still continued to be attacked as Putin's puppet, as there was, even Michael McFaul, the former ambassador to Russia, tweeted out, I think it must have been a few hours ago, tweeted out, not once during his 4 years in office did Trump issue any criticism of Vladimir Putin. Oh my God, that is terrible.
That's what Michael McFaul traffics in. Yes. And that's his whole existence. He's waiting, on Twitter, 24/7, drinking bad coffee, waiting for the challenge, and waiting for Putin's apology.
That's right.
What kind of life is that?
So, it doesn't matter he expels 60 Russian diplomats. Doesn't matter that he closes down consulates. Doesn't matter he sends lethal weapons to Ukraine. Doesn't matter he walks away from all these arms control agreements with Russia. What matters is that he hasn't offered any criticism of Putin. That's it. That's the only thing that matters.
It must be so pathetic to live in a small-minded world like that. Okay, believe me. I mean, they don't understand what foreign policy is. See, foreign policy for them is what's played out on Twitter, and Twitter is basically for psychopaths. Okay, connect the dots.
Right. Well, we will of course be maintaining our laser-like focus on these confirmation hearings, as unexciting as they undoubtedly are, but we will do so. Thank you, Peter. And remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.